Welcome to Total Reviews, the web show where we take a look at games of interest and see if they really are worth a purchase, in partnership with Games Planet, where you can purchase titles like our choice today from an officially licensed game seller. Today I take a look at F1 2016, a title that I have had reservations about and was debating whether or not to pick it up, given the past F1 titles from Codemasters. As the name suggests, this is the 2016 version of the official F1 game, which Codemasters have been making for quite some time now, featuring all the cars, rules, tyres, drivers and tracks from the 2016 calendar. F1 2016 looks at first glance to be a title that fits in the simcade category, but has options that make it more closer to the simulation category with some careful tweaking. As usual, we'll dive straight into the system specs before breaking down this offering to see where its strengths and weaknesses are and how it compares to its predecessors. Available on PC, PS4 and Xbox One, I am as usual taking a look at the PC version, but like another Codemasters title, Dirt Rally, the experience should be similar across all three systems. Minimum system requirements state the need for a 64-bit version of Windows 7, 8 or 10, as well as an Intel i3 530 or an AMD FX 4100 processor. 8GB of RAM is also required, and a decent GPU with the likes of an Nvidia GTX 460 or an AMD HD 5870 needed, both with DirectX 11 and 30GB of hard drive space. All in all, not very intensive if you want everything on minimum settings. Right, now that's out the way, time to get to the heart of the matter. I have not had an F1 game in my lineup since 2013, and even then the primary reason I had one was because of the older cars. I have tried out F1 2014 and 2015 and I was extremely disappointed with both. In fact, I found that Codemasters' title had been on a steady decline from 2012 onwards really, and nothing had changed my mind about that until Dirt Rally. So, with that in mind, I decided to try out this title, hoping that they were taking that new direction of awesome gameplay and were making it work into this year's game, maybe bringing back some of that enjoyment of F1 Championship Edition, which was a really great title. No fancy intro video or anything on this, it seems. I was treated to a bog standard loading screen followed by an intro screen with the faces of a number of drivers on the F1 2016 roster. First order of the day was to set up my control scheme, which I realised threw me straight into the options. Plenty of settings were available, but the one I could not see in the control setup was a clutch. Now this was a point of worry since I knew that there was a manual clutch available in the game, but I wondered what button it would be assigned to on my wheel. Audio options were fairly standard, except the fact that I could enable or disable the upshift bleeps, and to make the experience as realistic as possible, I enabled them. I was happy about the advanced camera options too, allowing me to really fine-tune my viewing experience, which is the mark of a good racing title really in this generation of triple screen setups, virtual reality and all those crazy rigs that people come up with. As well as that, there were loads and loads of graphical options available, so you could really tweak things to make things exactly, how you wanted them. So if you didn't want the crowd to be too in detail, or the vegetation or whatever, you could just change that around, the textures, the detailing, and make the cars more detailed or something like that. And I think that was pretty nice to have. I like it when there's lots and lots of different options available, especially in graphics and audio settings. The modes that are available all give a different racing experience to an extent. Time Trial pits you against the rest of the drivers in the world to see what you can do in some sort of a hot lap mode. Multiplayer is something that I tend to avoid since my last experience with it in F1 ended up with me being treated to a face full of barrier more often than not. Quick Race was a little misleading, since it can be a quick race or it can be a custom season, lending it more towards a custom race / season title in my opinion, not exactly quick race. Championship season seemed to be a mode where you'd get picked to drive, or you'd pick a driver to play as and attempted to become the world champion over the course of a season, which reminded me of other F1 titles where you could do similar things. But the one I was most curious about was career mode, which was split further into career and pro career, the latter being an ultra intensive realistic simulation of the career of an F1 driver, meaning 210 minutes of practice across 3 sessions, a 3-stage qualifying and a full race with simulation rules and damage for every single race, season upon grueling season. That's my idea of a challenge, and I am really glad that that was added in. That being said, I decided to try my hand out at a time trial for the first time at Albert Park just to get a bit of a feel for the title. I wasn't looking to set blistering lap times, I was just wanting to get a nice look at everything. My initial drive resulted in a crash pretty much immediately due to not being used to the brakes of the car, nor the way it steered, or how much torque the engines really had. Then, as things started settling in, I found the car to be really agile and turning in far more quickly than I would like, resulting in some corner cutting. Eventually though, I did start getting a nice feel for it. The sounds were pretty accurate on the car, meaning I didn't like them, but I can't fault Codemasters for accuracy, can I? Graphically it looked promising with smooth frames, great modelling and very good textures, as well as light bloom and a nice post-processing effect. It was quite nice. It did look, it had that realistic look to it, and I did like that. The colour scheme was quite nicely balanced, maybe a little bit too much. I think maybe it was a little too warm, but it was generally okay. And the fact that you could choose the time of day you wanted to be on a track for any track, as well as the weather, was pretty nice. Force feedback needed a little tweaking to get it feeling okay, but it was still a little bit dull and not as engaging as other titles have been. Nevertheless, it was still pretty good, and FFB always seems to be subjective anyway, so some people might like it, some people might not like it. I found it not to be the best, but it wasn't bad. I could still feel a number of things, and I was happy about that. As long as I can feel things, I'm happy. Having had enough of practice and feeling like I had a decent grip on the cars, I decided to check out another track. Where else but Circuit de Catalunya, this time in a quick race. After a mess up in the one-shot qualifying, which is one lap only, I started to learn what the AI were like to race. Initial difficulty was set to hard, but that ended up with a lot of rear-ending as I found them to be rather slow. It didn't take long for me to up the difficulty to expert, where I found more of a challenge, and less collisions. The racecraft of the AI though was very, very nice. It really was. They wouldn't just race me, but they were also racing each other regardless of the conditions. And I think that if you get the right difficulty, you could really enjoy the racing, which would be fair and involved a lot of dicing around. However, if you got the difficulty wrong, and you were either going to leave the field behind, or you're going to plough into the field, or have the field leave you behind. It was a fairly fine balance, and for me, I like jumping into the deep end of things, so I had everything set to elite on the actual race controls, meaning that traction control was off, there was no stability protection, no ABS, none of those things. Everything was just full simulation, just to see what I could do. I like doing that. I like throwing myself in the deep end of these things. You just get a much better feel for them. Weather plays a huge part in this title, with dynamic weather that can change lap after lap, or even over the course of a single lap. I didn't see the wind simulated though, which was disappointing, nor did I see pressure simulated actually, for that matter. But ambient and track temperatures were, as well as sky conditions and rain, all of which affects your driving. I quite like trying out one track in different conditions, so I chose Spa, as you would, ranging from heavy rain to light rain, damp, drying, and finally fully dry conditions. It was amazing how naturally I started to find a different line to make sure that I could keep as much grip as possible. And then, for a bit of fun, I decided to set up an impossible combination. Abu Dhabi at night in heavy rain. And it really didn't disappoint. And it also gave me a chance to see a new feature, the virtual safety car. I really wanted to see the actual safety car come up though, having been missing from the past few titles. But knowing that the system works, and I was nowhere near Sebastian Vettel when he retired from the race, I couldn't help but be impressed at how all the cars slowed down and how difficult it actually was to match a delta perfectly, though somehow by the end of the virtual safety car period I managed to get the delta to 0.000001. Absolute luck. F1 2016 really comes together though in the career mode. Once you choose your name, nationality, avatar and helmet, you can start out with any team you want, all which come with their own goals and their own objectives. Pick a top team, you'll be expected to be fighting for the championship from the get-go. Pick a mid-pack team and your goal will be to challenge in a couple of seasons. And if you start with a team from the bottom, you'll have the goal of developing the car for most of the career, should you wish to stay with that team. Codemasters have implemented a system where you have a manager that tells you what your team targets are for your weekend or overall, your rivalries if you have any, and any contract offers you may be getting from your team or from other teams that are wishing to bring you on board. You then have a research and development officer who gives you options on where you want to develop the car with points you accumulate. So you can do engine, suspension, aerodynamics, all those kind of things, which I think is pretty nice. Of course, if you're going to choose McLaren Honda, seriously go for the engine if you can. As soon as you can go for the engine, go for the engine. That's its weak point. It really is its weak point. And of course, each team had their own performance already to start with, and you could see the performance and how much performance gains you were going to get over another team. But those teams were also developing their car, so it was a cat and mouse game, and I think it was really nice. So how do you get these points though? Well, from the racing of course, and specifically from the free practice sessions. Unlike other titles where you just drove around getting used to the car, F1 2016 has a system where there are programs that the team want you to complete. The data that is gathered from those not only helps you on the R&D paths, but also with learning the track, driving within the limits of the tyres, qualifying pace and strategy, and the information that is gathered by the team goes into race strategy, giving you various strategies unlike previous games where all drivers stopped within a lap of each other, including yourself. I think that was pretty nice. I found the qualifying pace one the least useful though, because I could just do that with driving around anyway, but the tyre wear testing and the track acclimatization were brilliant, and I genuinely liked how they were set up and how I had to drive the car. Unfortunately though, the tyres in F1 2016 do not let you push to the max, as it is in real life, but you can always get the maximum off the line if you heat up the tyres right in the formation lap before the race. Yes, you did hear right, a formation lap. Heat your tyres and brakes and make sure you have the ideal temperatures to launch when the lights go out, and then once you're underway you have all the options to view your car information on the MFD on the right hand side, including your current mixture, your brake bias, your pit strategy, your tyre wear, your brake wear, your temperatures, and any damage to the car. On top of that, I was really happy that there was team radio built in, where your engineer would actually talk to you over the course of the race a lot more than previous titles, and you could talk back, both through the MFD or actually by talking into a microphone it seemed. But this didn't seem to work for me, so I don't know how well that feature works. In addition to that, the race actually would change, or the race team, race control, what's the actual name for them? Pit crew. Yeah, on the pit wall. The pit crew on the pit wall could actually change the race strategy mid-race, and you could confirm whether you wanted to change this race strategy. This may be due to damage, it could be due to different weather conditions, a number of factors, and I think that was really nice. So, that's the positives of the title, but as with all games there are some problems. Cutscenes and replays in particular seem to be poorly optimized. AA options did not seem to be brilliant and really did take a hit on the frames. The animations into the pits were pretty poor. I was disappointed with the fact that the end of the formation lap was controlled by the computer. It would be nice to have to pull into your grid slot by yourself and then have the option of missing it and getting a penalty and all those kind of things. I think that would have been pretty nice. The clutch seemed far too easy really, and it was bound to the gear up paddle which had to be held. I didn't like that. The computer did also tend to glitch out when things went wrong, with one of the incidents leaving me in a disqualification for not being able to do anything. And the AI was slower than expected in some corners, resulting in me getting a little too close for comfort, or leading to a far too easy pass, far too easy overtake. With that, I also realized that the simulation damage was fairly forgiving. Not incredibly, but a fair amount. Things that should have resulted in damage did not, and I wish they did. And lastly, what happened to pre-season testing and driver interviews? With all the simulation aspects that they put in, they really should have been an option. Maybe not the driver interviews, they were quite annoying in F1 2010. But pre-season testing, that's been around for ages. I think that should have been the way into F1. You do some pre-season testing. I think they had it in the F1 2012 game, 2013 game, and then depending on how you've performed there, you get an offer from the team. I think that would have been really nice. That being said, this is by far the best F1 title I have seen, and really has so much that can be done with it. I'm sure a number of glitches and performance issues will be ironed out in patches to come. Indeed, 2 have already been released to fix a few bugs, and I look forward to seeing what F1 2017 brings, because if they build upon this title, next year is just going to be even better. A solid 87 out of 100 for me, and a hearty recommendation to all F1/racing fans, because this will provide a fair amount of enjoyment. And if you do want to pick this up on PC, do check the link in the description box below. It'll take you to Games Planet, and you can support us whilst you purchase this lovely title. I think my next Total Reviews episode is going to be on Assetto Corsa. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode.